Hello everyone. First of all, thank you very much for joining me today. I hope I can make good use of your time, make it worth it. We're going to be talking about InfoPath 2010, of course, how and where to deploy InfoPath 2010 forms. It's going to be all about InfoPath, and there's going to be a lot of InfoPath stuff, and I hope you enjoy it. My name is Asif Rahmani. I'm a SharePoint Server MVP and a trainer and solution architect. You get my email address down there too. If you want to connect with me, you're welcome to do so. I'm going to cover one slide with my information in depth of what I do, and then we'll go into the actual demos. So who am I? Like I said before, I'm a SharePoint Server MVP and a Microsoft Certified Trainer. I run a website, and I am a principal contributor also to the website called SharePoint-videos.com. At SharePoint-videos.com, you'll see no-code solutions using SharePoint, SharePoint Designer, and InfoPath. And that's both for 2007 stuff and now for 2010 stuff. I'll show you the page later on, which we have built just recently, which has about 14 or 15 videos already for InfoPath 2010. So I think you'll enjoy that. Current count of videos that we have are 172 videos. These are all about 8 minutes to 12, 13 minutes kind of videos. So a direct, quick dose of what you want to learn and not much more. And with no slides, by the way. Most, if not all of our screencasts, our videos have no slides. It's just demos. Also, I'm a co-author of the Professional SharePoint Designer 2007 and currently working on the Beginning SharePoint Designer 2010 book. Enjoying that quite a bit. That process is a great process to be able to dump our information directly into a book so you guys can enjoy it for SharePoint Designer specifically. And I enjoy presenting at conferences, TechEd, SharePoint Conference, SharePoint Connections. If you are coming to TechEd next week, actually, TechEd 2010, I hope I meet you there. I'll be there doing an interactive session on SharePoint Designer 2010. Alright, so that's all about me. If you have any questions, like I said, my email is up above, right there. Welcome to reach out to me if you like. This presentation is going to have lots of demos. Hopefully this, just all demos, really. Lots of cool stuff to show you. You can put your Q&A in the Q&A board. There's a questions panel in the GoToWebinar screen. I'll get to that at the end of the presentation. I don't want to stop in the middle, but I'll try to get to as many as possible within the last 10 minutes or so of the presentation. It's going to be an hour-long presentation altogether with the questions. And I'm hoping that most of you, if not all, have some InfoPath concepts already in your mind, in your head. So it doesn't have to be 2010 concepts, just basic InfoPath 2003, 2007 concepts, because the fundamental concepts remain the same. And the new functionality is what I'm going to demonstrate. Okay, so I won't be going into the nitty-gritty of what InfoPath is and stuff like that. It's a 200-level webinar, so we'll stick with that. Okay. All right, so here it is. We begin. First, I have a few slides. I do want to cover some slides, some good information with you guys, so you have a good understanding of what I'm about to show you, and then I'll show it to you. Okay, so first off, looking at the top over here, oops, here we go. Looking at the top right here, InfoPath 2010, the first box over here, you have two applications now in InfoPath 2010. You have a form designer and a form filler. So while we had only one application in InfoPath 2003, InfoPath 2007, now we have two applications, okay, form designer and form filler. They do the exact same kind of things that we used to do before, but before in 2007 and 2003, you had one application that you used to design the forms, and if you're just a person filling out the forms, you use the same exact application. And now you can have two different products, one for designers, one for people who are just filling out the forms. Okay? Please keep in mind, though, that this is all needs to be licensed. So none of this stuff is free. You still have to license Form Designer and Form Filler, which comes out of the box with Office 2010 Professional Plus, Office 2010 Enterprise, Office 2010 Ultimate, and maybe one more. Okay, the forms that you make using Forms Designer can be filled out in browser and in client forms. So of course, client here means that Form Designer makes forms that can be filled out in the Form Filler application. But also, if you have SharePoint Server Enterprise, then your forms that you design in InfoPath 2010 can be filled out using the browser. And the way that functionality works is there's a component of SharePoint Server Enterprise called Forms Server. You can only buy that. It only comes with SharePoint Server Enterprise. About a year and a half ago, you could buy that separately, but that's no longer the case. You have to have SharePoint Server Enterprise to serve up your forms, to serve your forms to your users using the browser. Okay, the second box over here talks about integration of InfoPath with SharePoint. Now, keeping in mind that InfoPath 2010 application can be used by itself without SharePoint, whatsoever. But if you want to use SharePoint, which is definitely recommended, then there's a variety of ways that you can use InfoPath in 2010 SharePoint. First, you can make list forms. What does that mean? Well, you have lots of different lists in SharePoint, right? You have tasks, discussion board, you have a calendar list, you have all these different kind of lists. And whenever you click on the add new item button over there, or add new item link in one of these lists, a form pops up. That form can be customized using InfoPath. Same thing with edit form, view form. There's a trick to doing each form separately. I'll talk briefly about it, and there's a video that you can watch on the site about how you can do it separately. I will show you a demo of how you can do the edit form. The remaining you can watch on the site. Anyway, so that's lists. External lists talks about lists which are special lists in SharePoint that actually have this data showing up from a line of business application. So if you have a custom database out there, if you have a SAP database, PeopleSoft, or whatever it is out there, and you're connected to that database using something called Business Connectivity Services, BCS, which is also part of SharePoint. If you have that running, if everything is working right in that thing, then you can take that data and show it in an external list. So that list data is showing all the information from that dynamically from that backend database. So the forms that come up with that external list, just like any other form with a regular list, can also be modified using InfoPath. That's what this is saying. Third thing here, this functionality has been around since the beginning of SharePoint 2003 and InfoPath 2003 as well, is you can make form library forms. Okay, and let me spend just a few seconds on this as well, because some people I still feel are confused about exactly what this means. You have a document library that all of us use in SharePoint, right? Document library, when you make a first document library, let's say, and you don't specify which template it's going to use, it automatically uses the Microsoft Office Word template, right? So when you click on the new button on the library, when a user clicks on a new button, they'll get a open, blank Word template to fill it out. Just like that, a form library uses an InfoPath form. Now, what good is an InfoPath form that's blank, right? There's no point to having a blank InfoPath form. So InfoPath lets you publish directly to form libraries or even create them from scratch, and now you have a filled in a form, for example, a asset tracking form or a scheduling form or whatever kind of form that you can start using right away. Your users go to the library, click on new form, they get the form, start filling it out, publish it back to the library. This functionality works with all versions of SharePoint, all versions of InfoPath. You don't need SharePoint Server Enterprise for this functionality to work. If you want to show the forms within the browser, once again we're talking about the browser, this stuff right here, then and only then you need SharePoint Server Enterprise, and you can use form libraries within SharePoint Server Enterprise, and those forms will show up in the browser. Okay, so now that I have that cleared up, one more functionality that's new to SharePoint 2010 is the workflow forms. The requirement for this thing is you have to have SharePoint Server Standard or SharePoint Server Enterprise. This does not work with SharePoint Foundation 2010. So what this is saying here is that when you make a new workflow in SharePoint Designer, let's say, or actually even regular out-of-the-box workflows, when you make a new workflow, it gives you an InfoPath form automatically. Any form that it automatically makes to interact with the user, like an initiation form, a task form, association form, etc., those forms are automatically have the extension .xsn. The .xsn extension is for InfoPath. So let's say if you're making a SharePoint Designer workflow, you have in SharePoint Designer the XSN file there. You click on the XSN file, it opens up the form for you to modify. You modify an InfoPath, publish it back to the workflow, and that's it. Your users now will see that new form when they go to the workflow. That functionality is available as a video on the SharePoint-videos.com site. I will not get a chance to show you that today. Now the third thing here talks about how you can work with SharePoint Workspace in tandem with InfoPath. So the way this works is your lists, your libraries, most of them are capable of being taken offline with SharePoint Workspace. SharePoint Workspace, by the way, is the evolution of oh God, I forgot that word now. How am I missing that word in my head? I'm sorry. It's okay. I can't think of it. It's a software that used to be there, and now it's the evolution of that software. Just completely skipped my mind. Anyway, SharePoint Workspace is there to show all this stuff offline, list your libraries, etc. And when you have your InfoPath form that you've modified for a list, for example, it will show up in SharePoint Workspace. Okay, the word I was missing was Groove, by the way. Okay, Groove was a software before, and Groove has been replaced now with SharePoint Workspace. Sorry about that. This thing right here talks about forms that can exist in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook. Those forms can also be made using InfoPath 2010. Okay, so awesome functionality, great integration that you have now. Moving on forward here. When you open up InfoPath 2010, now you get this new awesome looking screen, and it has all the different available form templates in it. It starts off asking you, what do you want to create? Do you want to make a SharePoint list, a library? Do you want to send this form directly through email? What do you want to do? And it will let you do whatever you want to do. Okay. Within the InfoPath form, to make it truly dynamic, you need to make some form fields which are, for example, required in nature, some fields which have specific content, and you have to search for that, make sure that that content is there, for example, email, for example, phone number, etc. So those things, all you can do with validation, with formatting. You can show validation as a dialog box, for example, pop up saying that, hey, this is not valid. Or formatting, you can have a color change of a text box to red, which I'm going to show you later, telling the user that this is not correct, etc. Action, the last thing over here, talks about how you can have picture buttons and regular buttons in InfoPath, and once those buttons are clicked, an action can take place. An action could be switching the view of the form. One view of the form could have some data, and the other view of the form can have some other data which is not present in the first view of the form, so that you can switch views using buttons, picture buttons or regular buttons. Similarly, you can have a field on the form being set with some value when a button is pushed. Or the form itself gets submitted, gets published somewhere to the library, for example, and that could also be a button. So all these actions you can do, and none of this stuff, by the way, requires any code whatsoever. There's some really, really cool stuff you can do. I already have videos on SharePointVideos.com of this stuff happening with InfoPath 2007, and I'm currently working on videos right now for InfoPath 2010 with this functionality as well, with the action stuff. All right, moving on forward. Here's the first thing I'm going to show you when I get into the demo environment, how you can make form library forms. As I mentioned before, you use InfoPath to dynamically make your forms. Once you're done making your form, you can host them into Forms library, okay, directly in Form library, and then you can serve it up using InfoPath Filler. So a person comes in, they have InfoPath Filler on their desktop or laptop, they use it to fill out your form. That's one scenario. Second is, if you have SharePoint Server Enterprise running, then the browser can be used to fill out the form. Okay, so make sure you understand that SharePoint Server Enterprise license is required for this to happen. All right, before I move on to the next thing, I'm going to go ahead and show you the demo here. Let me just switch my screen quickly. All right, so now you're looking at a demo machine that I have, and I'm going to use this. First, I'll go to Start, All Programs, Microsoft Office. Within Microsoft Office, you find the Microsoft InfoPath Designer 2010, and like I said before, if you're for end users who don't need to design forms but just to fill out the forms, they can only have the InfoPath Filler 2010. That would be enough for them to have. All right, I'll go into Designer. Here's my Backstage, also called the File menu now, but Backstage is the proper name that has been used since the beginning. In this backstage, you decide if you want to make a SharePoint list, SharePoint form library, and there are other options also which I'll discuss, how you can send an email to somebody with the form in that. I'll discuss that. I won't be able to show it to you, but I'll be discussing that. And there's other options like converting existing form. This I have a couple of videos out there on the SharePointVideos.com site, converting a Word document and all the different options that you have to convert a Microsoft Word document to InfoPath, and also converting a Microsoft Excel workbook and converting that to InfoPath form. Okay, all the stuff that it can do and cannot do, basically. All right, I'm going to start with a SharePoint form library. Click on Design Form. All right, first thing that I want to do is name it something. It's going to be a data collection form, so I'll just simply name it data collection form. I'll put a picture in here. Insert picture. Now I have some pictures in my images folder, so I'll take the AdventureWorks picture. Simple enough. This works exactly like Microsoft Word would work. Let me align this properly. I'll click on the picture, click on the Home tab, and align it left. Take this, put this on a different line, let's say. Align this to the right. Much better. If you want to change the theme of the form, make it look better, there's lots of different themes available in the Page Design tab. Lots of stuff. Let me go ahead and choose a playground theme. How about this one? Okay. Now this bottom stuff right here I do not need, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. So this is just a table. When you select this stuff, you have the table tools that pop up above. You can just use that to delete it right here. Delete table. You can also right click. I could have also right click to do it. This is going to be a section to collect employee information. The information that I'm looking for is going to be name, department, okay, manager, and I need one more line, so I'll right click on here, insert a row below. Simple enough. Okay, phone number, date and time. The form is being filled out right now. This is going to be the it's going to be actually we don't need that here. Email, and then confirm email. All right, so we got this stuff over here. And you know what? Actually, one more line I'm going to put in here. Let me take this data right here. Okay, confirm email, and this one I'm going to put in return by date. So I want the form returned by a certain date. Okay, or something like that. And this return by date, let's say, has to be after the date and time. Just keep that in mind. All right. These tables that you have here, these are for alignment only, and they don't show up in the actual view of the form. When you go to the Home tab and you click on the preview, none of the lines in the table show up down here. Okay. But it's also always good to use these tables for alignment. For name, I'm going to put in a text box. Here's the controls in the Home tab. Okay, I'll put in a text box right here. For department, I'll put in a combo box. Combination box is a combination of a text box and a drop-down list. For manager, I'm going to use a new control that was not present in InfoPath 2007. It's called the Person Group Picker. Person Group Picker, and this is useful when you're deploying stuff to SharePoint. All right, for phone, put a text box. Date and time. This is also a new control I'm going to put in here. It's called the Date and Time Picker. Okay, Date and Time Picker right here. And let's see. Let's make this a little bit bigger here so we can see it nicely. For return by date, we'll put a text box. For email, text box, and for confirmation email, text box. To control the properties of what these fields are called and their data validation, whatever, that's going to happen to the Control Tools menu up above. Control Tools menu up above right here. Okay. I'll click on the one that I want to change, for example, name. Click on Control Tools, Properties, make this employee name. There cannot be a space between the name, so I'll put it together. This I want to make it required, so I'll click on the cannot be blank checkbox. Easy enough. Now it's a required field, and it also shows up in the task pane right here, employee name. Okay. For department, currently right now what I'm going to do is put in some manual choices, and later I'll show you how you can take data from database or from a SharePoint list and put it in here. But right now I'm just going to click on edit choices, enter choices manually, let's add IT, marketing, sales. That's good. Okay, manager. Let's go ahead and change this name to manager. No validation here. For phone, control tools, properties, let's change that to phone, and I'll return to this field to put some validation on here later. Date and time, it's called field 4 right now. I'll click on properties, make sure this is named date time. It's already data type date and time, which should be the case. Now here what I want to do is automatically fill this in with the current date and time. So I'll click on default value. For default value right here, I'm going to click on the FX button and I'll say insert function. The function that I'm going to choose is the now function. Many of these functions here are just like functions in Excel, the user-defined functions in Excel. All right. And also I'm going to say that do not refresh value when the formula is recalculated. So only the first time the form comes up, it should have the date put in there, and then it's going to stay, date and time. Okay, for return by date, I just want to make sure that this date, which your user will fill out, or actually, well, let's say whoever fills it out, it could be the manager later or before. This date it has to be in the future. It cannot be in the past. Since we know that the date and time field is going to have the current time and the current date, we're going to make sure that the return by date has to be after the date and time. So return by date, I'm going to change that name to return date, and we'll make a rule for this. There's many quick rules that are provided right here in the ribbon where it says add rule. Quick rules are basically a wizard driven, quick and easy way to put a rule in there. I'll say add rule, and what I want is let's see, you know what, I use the wrong control here, sorry about that. Here's how easy it is to change a control, by the way. Return by date, I'm going to change that from text box to a date picker. Right click, change control, date picker. Yeah, I meant to do that. Yeah, I chose the wrong one on purpose, of course. Alright, now I'm going to go in return by date field, change the data type from text to date in this case. Okay, and now I'm going to say add rule if it's before something. So that's the first part that I'm going to pick. You see right above it says if it's before something, and that thing that needs to be defined later, then do something. And in this case, it's going to be show validation error. Okay, now it's asking me if it's before what. Well, if it's before the date and time, of course. So I'll click on FX button. I'm going to choose a field. So I'll click on insert field or group, and I'm going to choose the date time field. Okay, and okay. And okay. Okay, so what it did for me right here is that it made a new rule for me automatically using this quick rules functionality. It's called it rule 1, which I can easily change. Date must be greater than today, something like that. Always good to name your rules. And then the condition is return date is less than date time and return date is not blank. Then the rule type is validation. The screen tip is going to show when you hover over the text or the date picker control is going to be enter a date on or after date time, or this I can change that to today. And then under show more options, if you wanted to, you can have a dialog box message show up here as well. I'm going to disregard that for right now. I'm done with my rule. Let me go now to the email. And in email, what I'm going to do is once again, add rule. Actually, in this case, what I want to do instead of this thing, I'm going to click on Manage Rules. And once I have the Rules task pane open, I'm going to put a rule in here. Before you do that, let me go ahead and change the name for this to email. Okay. All right. Email. Let's make a new rule. This rule is going to be a validation rule. The rule name is going to be must be valid format. And now for condition, you can click on this none. It brings your dialog box. And in this dialog box, you can go ahead and configure your conditions. So what do I want to do here? Well, I want to look for a particular pattern, right? Email has to match a particular pattern. So the condition here is going to be email if it does not match a pattern. And I'm going to click on select a pattern here for the third drop down and choose the email pattern. We did not have the email pattern in the last version of InfoPath, and now it comes out of the box. Before you had to create it using regular expressions, but now it's just right there. Okay, and I'll put in some one more option here as well. Email does not match pattern, email, and email is not blank. Then do that. All right, so here's a couple different rules, a couple different conditions that I put in there in that rule. You know, just like that, what I want to do is make this rule also similar in this case, right? Actually, one thing I forgot here, I forgot to put the screen tip, and it's telling me that up above that you forgot to put the screen tip in. Must be valid email. Okay, so now I'm done. All right. This email rule that I just made right now is going to be similar to the phone rule. The only difference here being that, of course, I'm looking for the phone pattern instead of the email pattern. So the way you do that is I can take this rule right here and copy it. You can copy rules now. You can copy one rule. You can copy all the rules if you wanted to on a field. Copy rule. I'll go to phone, and here I'm going to paste the rule right here, just like that. Must be valid format. That sounds good. Let's go to the condition. I'm going to change the condition, of course, to say that does not match pattern. Let's select the phone number pattern, which is like this. Okay. And phone is not blank. Perfect. For confirm email, I'm going to put a conditional formatting up here. So let's first go ahead and name it confirm email. I have not saved the form in a while. Let me go ahead and save the form before I proceed. Okay, data collection form. All right. So for confirm email, what I want to do is say add rule. If it is not equal to something, then show the formatting of red, basically bad. That's what I want to do. Now it's asking me, what do you want to check with? Well, I want to check with the email field. So I'll click on FX button, insert field, and choose the email field. Okay. Okay, and okay. All right, so if it is not equal to the email field, go ahead and show the formatting error. Now save this and see if it's all working. Home tab, preview. Name here is required, as you can see by the asterisk, so I'll put in my own name in this case. Date and time, it's current date and time, perfect. Return by date, let's put in June 2nd, doesn't like that. It has to be after today, perfect. Okay, so it's the validation is firing over here, perfect. Department, these are departments that I have. I can also type in a department if I wanted to, if it's not in the list, since it's a combo box. For manager, I'm going to show this to you. I'll wait and show this to you when we get to the to SharePoint. Phone number can't just be random numbers. It has to be valid. Oops, I think I had something in my clipboard. Sorry about that. It has to be a valid format, just like that. Perfect. Email, once again, it cannot just be random text. It has to be something specific, something that matches the email format, of course. Here's my email address, asif@sharepointelearning.com. Confirm email, of course, has to match the email. If it doesn't, then it shows up as bad. So let me go ahead and put the right email in. and now the formatting should disappear, and it does. Alright, so the form is working perfectly fine. Wonderful. What I want to do now is go ahead and publish this form out to a form library. Before I do that, let me show you SharePoint. This is a new site that I created earlier called Webinar. Okay, I'm going to publish to this site, so I'll need the URL for this site. Here's my URL, just enough for the name of the site. Copy it. Back in InfoPath. File. Publish. 4 different options here that are showing up. SharePoint server, email, network location, actually 3 different main options right here. And then you can export the source files. But SharePoint server, email, and network location, where do you want to publish it? Network location does not require SharePoint at all. You don't need SharePoint. Like it says here, use this option when you do not have access to SharePoint server. You can just put your file directly on a file share somewhere, and then people can use it. People can use the InfoPath file from there to fill out their forms. Email, which I'll also briefly discuss later, is the functionality to send a form, InfoPath form, directly through email, and the person who's filling out the form at the other end does not need to have Outlook. They can have any email system. They do need, though, InfoPath Filler to fill out the form. They need InfoPath Filler to fill out the form. This does not work in the browser, of course. SharePoint server is what we're going to choose right now. So I'll click on SharePoint server. Here I need to tell it the location, webinar site, there you go. Authenticate. Excuse me. Password. Alright. There are 3 options to publish your form to SharePoint. You have a form library, which is the most basic option. This is what I talked about earlier. This is what I'm going to do right now to publish to an existing form library as a form template, or make a new form library. The second option, which is site content type, is a much more powerful option. You encompass your form template within a content type. And then that content type can be used in multiple places, multiple form libraries, let's say. Later, if you want to republish the form with some modifications, you can just publish it directly into the content type, and it will take care of the changes everywhere that is being used. A very powerful functionality. The third one here, administrator approved form template. This says over here that if you want to have the web server administrator, the SharePoint server administrator, look at the form, verify everything is correct, there's no errors, there's no issues, logical, whatever in there, you can go ahead and have this person approve it, and then they can make it available to a site collection. The good thing about this last one is that they can make it available throughout the farm, SharePoint farm, if you wanted to. And it's going to be available in all different site collections within the farm as a site collection content type. Okay, so as a content type, I should say, at the top level, top site of the site collection. Both of these scenarios, the site content type and administrator approved form template, I have videos of them already online, InfoPath 2010 page on SharePointVideos.com. So you can see the site content type and administrator approved form template options there. Click on Next. I want to make a new form library, so I'll click on that. Next, name of the library is going to be Data Collection. Next, this last, second last option here shows me that if you want, you can promote your fields as columns in your form library. Click on Add. I'll choose the employee name. Add. I'll choose the, I forgot to label my department. I just realized. Well, I'm going to go ahead and choose a field to right now, and I'll relabel it if I get a chance. Add. For manager, what I want to do is I want to show this person's display name. So the manager field displays as a group, and I can drill down into that and show either the account name, the account ID, or the account type. The account name or display name sounds good. Okay. Let's do one more here. Email address. Okay, so these are the 4 fields in the form that are going to eventually become columns in my library. Next, and publish. There was one other text box, other area that was below the in the text in the property promotion window where I added the fields, and that small area is related to the InfoPath form web part. InfoPath form web part I'm going to show you a little bit later, so let's wait for that. I'll click on the Open This Form Library checkbox, click on Close. Directly takes me to it. You click on Add Document here. And now here's your form. By default, it shows up in the browser right away. Let's put in Tim Department. Let's go ahead and choose a department. Manager field, I promise you that I'm going to show you this here, so here we go. You can browse now to your Active Directory. Okay, you can, for example, I can look for myself, Asif. Here we go. Select that person, put it in here. So now you have the people picker that appears many web places in SharePoint. You have that directly into the form. Okay, and this behaves just like it should. Okay, confirm email. And I'm just going to take this and paste it in here. Return by date, once again, it cannot be in the past. So if I try to do June 1st, that doesn't work. Let's do June 25th. All right. I can save this now. Ask me to name it. My name here is going to be Tim. Save. This option, by the way, of saving the form like that, this can be automated. It can be automatically submitted. All that stuff can happen. I do have videos of how you can do that in InfoPath 2007, and that remains the exact same in 2010. So you can watch that on SharePointVideos.com if you wish. Here you go. All my information that I filled out is appearing here. Employee name, field 2, which is department, of course. Display name, this is displaying the person's manager, and email address. Okay, great. All right, I'm going to move on now to the next part of my demonstration because we have still a lot more to cover here. So let's briefly talk about this here. All right. InfoPath list form. This is a typical form, basically, that has been modified here. A list form. In this case, it's a task list form, and I'm going to show you the exact one, how you can do that. Very simple process, actually. You can go to a SharePoint list, click on that I want to customize the form, and it'll let you customize it. Once again, remember what I showed you, talked about before, that this functionality only works with SharePoint Server Enterprise. Okay, there's one more thing I'm going to show you later as well, and that's the InfoPath form web part. Now you have a specific web part. It comes with SharePoint Server Enterprise called the InfoPath forms web part. You can use that web part to show your InfoPath forms within it. These InfoPath forms that you can show within this InfoPath form web part can be InfoPath list web parts, or it could be InfoPath form web parts. Meaning, if you have customized a list, like the task list that I'm going to show you, you can show that task list form directly into the InfoPath form web part. Similarly, though, the form that I just published to SharePoint, that was the data collection form. That form can also be shown in an InfoPath form web part. So extremely powerful because it's a form, because it's a web part. It has all the web part capabilities, meaning you can change the web part name, you can change the connections of the web part, of how it connects to other web parts to flow data, etc. You can change the dimensions of how the web part looks. It's completely transportable. So lots of cool things that you can do with InfoPath form web part. Right. And I'll come back to the data connections part, but let me just go ahead and talk about this right now. There is a data tab that appears in InfoPath, and using this data tab, you can go ahead and connect to a variety of sources like SharePoint lists, web services, SharePoint server, etc. All right, and this I'll show you, I believe, last. All right, let me just flip over here to my environment. Okay, so what I want to do is go to my tasks list. Tasks list that currently is there. It's by default. I haven't touched it. If I click on the add new item, it should give me the default item here. How about we just call it task 1, for example. I'll Click on Save. Here you go, saved it. If I go to edit this task, edit item, once again the same form pops up, shows me how you can edit the form, right? No difference. Great. I want to edit this particular form that just came up. So to do that, you can go to the List tab, and this button right here is only going to be visible if you have SharePoint Server Enterprise. You click on the Customize Form button, and if you have this is a big if in this case, if you have InfoPath 2010 Designer running on your laptop or desktop, then InfoPath will come up. And now I can go ahead and modify this form. So at the top of the form, what I'll do is go insert my Same Adventure Works picture. Simple enough to do. And then I'm going to take my title text box and I'll move the title text box right below my picture to give it an extra pizzazz, basically a big title for this task. And I'm going to give it big text as well. So I'll click on the text box, click on Home tab, make it bold, maybe change the text to something a little bit more bold here, make it bigger, maybe change even the color that it appears in, all the cool things that you can do in InfoPath. I no longer need the title row, so I'll right click here, delete row. For all the first column here, which is all the labels, I'm going to select it, click on bold, maybe go to the Table Tools layout, change the shading to something else, make it nicely shaded. Okay, so the form is really looking alive and looking much better than it did before. So this is how easy it is after you're done modifying your form. You can click on this small button right here called Quick Publish, or you can click on File and this Quick Publish, the big button here basically, and this shows you exactly where it's going to publish the form. Webinar site, task list. Okay, so Quick Publish has been pressed. Now it's going, it's working on it, and that's it. Your form template has been published successfully. Okay, let's check it out. I believe this, yeah, this is it. Internet.wingtip.net, yeah, this is it. So now in my task list, if I click on the Add New Item, the form has been replaced with the InfoPath form. Just like that. The form has been replaced. Alright? And the same form comes up if I click on Edit Item. The same form comes up if I click on the View Item. Alright. Question in your mind might be that how can I have different kind of forms, right? There's a trick to it, to have different forms, different create new item form, different edit form, and different view form. And that trick, like I said, there's a video about that on SharePoint videos, so watch that if you would like to know. This is a really good place right now where I can show you where that page is on our site. So let me do that quickly, then I'll come back to the demo. SharePoint-videos.com, here it is. When you go to video categories, there's the InfoPath 2010 videos category, brand new. And in here we have lots of videos that will that show you all the functionality that I've showed you today and that I'm about to show you in the InfoPath form web part, and a whole lot more that I won't get a chance, unfortunately, to show you today. Okay, so be sure to check it out. If you have any questions about the site, please let me know. Going back now to our demo, what I want to show you now is how the InfoPath form web part works. I'll do that in a new page. So Site Actions, New Page. I'll call this Team Tasks. In this new page that I just created in SharePoint, I'll insert the existing list, and that's going to be, of course, a task list that I just modified. So Tasks, Add. Now, right below the task list, what I want to do is put my InfoPath form web part here. And I'll tell you in a second why I'm doing this. I'll click on Insert, click on Web Part. Let's look for this one. This is under Forms category, InfoPath form web part. Once again, you will only see this if you have SharePoint Server Enterprise. Click on Add, and it puts it right there. Now what I can do is make a connection from this web part to my task list that is displayed on this page. So what can happen is then I can click on a task and it can show the information about the task directly in the InfoPath form web part as a form. To do that, you would need to go to this drop-down menu. But this is a big change from SharePoint 2007. You don't even see the connections option right here, until you go to Edit Web Part. So you put this page in edit mode, and now this page and this web part is in edit mode. Now I see connections right here. So the connection that I want to make for this web part is going to be get the form for this web part from somewhere. And it tells me that the only place I can get it from is the tasks list, which is appearing on this page. So I'll click on tasks. Okay, and here it is. It's telling me here that now you've chosen to pick, to connect this web part. That means that you cannot use any of these options right here, list or library or content type. I didn't want to use that anyway, so that's no problem. Click on OK. Because I only have one task here, of course, that's the one that's showing up. Let me add a new task quickly. That's going to be task 2, of course. Oh. Sorry, what did I do here? Oh, I'm sorry. I think there was some required field that I did not fill in. Sorry about that. I'll click on Add New Item one more time. Task 2 needs to be assigned to somebody. Put it to myself. Predecessor, no. Priority, high, or normal is fine, I guess. Status is in progress. Due date, we'll put a due date in there as well. Let's see, and some description. I think that's all good. Save. Okay, my form got saved, my task 2 got saved, and now to show the different tasks in my form, I need to simply click on this double-sided arrow, the double end arrow over here. Okay, so now clicked on it, now it's showing me task 2, and back to task 1. So that's how the InfoPath form web part works. Alright, now leaving all this stuff behind, I'm going to go back to my form library form, which is the data connection form, and I'm going to show you one last thing, which is how to make data connections to external sources. Okay, so this we talked about, SharePoint list forms and InfoPath form web part, and now I'm going back to the data collection form, and in here I'm going to show you how you can make a connection to an external source. Field 2, I guess it doesn't matter. I can keep the same field name for right now. What I want to do is go to Properties here, go to Edit Choices, and in the Edit Choices, I'll say Get Choices from External Data Source. And I want to add a new data source to this form. To receive data, that is correct. Next. I'm getting information from a database, Microsoft SQL Server. That's the only one that's supported in this case. Next, I need to select a database, so I'll do that. In this select data source, I don't have any existing connections, so I'll click on New Source. Lots of different dialog boxes you have to go through to get to this. Microsoft SQL Server is the source. Next, server name is Wingtip Server for me. Next, and now I'm going to choose my AdventureWorks database, which exists on the server. And within that, I'll go to the department table. So, okay, so AdventureWorks database, department table, next, and finish. It's bringing back these 4 fields. That's fine. Next, next, and finish. All right. So the value that this text box is going to represent is going to be in the department ID column, the department ID field. For the display name, let me change that to show the name of the department. Okay, the name of the department is going to be shown. The value is going to be the actual ID. And the reason this is the case is because you can pass this value. This department ID could be 1, 2, 3, etc. to a different control. There's a video that I have on the site called cascading dropdowns, and that is where this becomes really, really relative, where you would want to use that. All right, click on OK, and I believe that's it. Let me click on File, quick publish, and quick publish here says that whatever you published it last time, which is my data collection form library, you can go ahead and publish it, republish it back there. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry. What I want to do, I couldn't do that. I cannot do that right now because here's the deal. If you publish this right now to the SharePoint server, there's one more component that needs to be configured, and that is putting this connection that I just made right now into a data connection library. And that requires additional 5-6 more minutes, which we don't have right now. But there's a video out there for that too, how you can convert your connections into a data connection library and use that for database connections. What I'm just going to show you here, if I can, is home, go to preview. Oh, okay. You'll have to take my word for this. I'm sorry, but because this form has already been published, it won't let me show the actual it won't let me show the drop down with all the different selections from the database because it's a potential security concern. I can override this from changing my forms services settings in my central administration, but I believe right now it's just not worth it doing all that stuff. Alright, so this does work, believe me, in practicality. You have a video that you can watch on my site to prove that if you like. What I want to do now is go to Data tab, go to Data Connections, and I'm going to remove this connection for now. Remove, yes. I'll make a new connection, and that's going to be to a SharePoint list. But before I can make the connection, I need to make a quick list. In my SharePoint site, I'll go to More Options, and I'll be making a custom list. It's going to be departments. This I'm going to do quickly. I will not be explaining this because this is a simple task which I'm hoping everybody knows already. Let's go to Datasheet View, put in a few departments, IT, marketing, sales. Okay, and standard view. Okay, so I have a list called departments. I'll take the location for that list, URL. In my InfoPath, I'll click on Add to add a new data source. To receive data that is correct, my data this time is going to be coming from SharePoint library or list. Next. Here it is. Next. I'm choosing the departments list. Next. And the one that I care about is a title for the department. Next, next, and finish. Once you made a connection, you can go back to the Control, and in Control you can click on Properties, Edit Choices, just like I did before. The only difference here being that my data source already exists. I didn't have to click on the Add button anymore. And in here I'm going to say that the display name, I want to show the title. Okay, and okay. Alright, all set. Let's do a preview of this. Okay, so here's how easy it was to get to a SharePoint list to get information from there. And just like I said before too, the database option was also very easy. I just couldn't demo it for you, but it works just fine. Alright, so that's how you can make connections to databases, SQL Server in this case, and to SharePoint list. Of course, a question in your mind might be that, hey, what if I want to make a connection to a Oracle database? Or what if I want to make a connection to some other database that's not Microsoft, of course, right? You can do that as well. The trick to doing that is by going to data and using a web service, either a SOAP web service or a REST web service, depending on whichever one is supported by the end system. But you can use a web service to go directly to that source, and as long as that source, your Oracle database, for example, supports web services, which Oracle definitely does, you can go ahead and connect to it and get information directly from there. Okay, so that's how that will work. All right. Let me go ahead and quickly go back to my PowerPoint here. Publishing options, I already talked about these things. Let me go a little bit more into the email option. Excuse me. Email option, this works in a way that you can have an InfoPath format part showing up as an email attachment, or it can be showing up directly in an email, in your inbox basically. Either way, you can fill out the form and submit it back to someone who actually sent you the email with the form. And in Outlook, there's a functionality which lets you show the actual forms, aggregate the data, sum it up all together within the Outlook environment. So you don't even need a SharePoint list or library. You just need Outlook to be able to show all the form data directly there if you wish, if you don't want to use SharePoint. So that's some really, really cool stuff that you can do. Let me just put this slide up. Thank you guys, first of all, for attending. Here's some call to action items that I would recommend connecting with me through the subscribing to the newsletter. My Twitter ID is there if you would like to connect that way, email address. Watch the videos on SharePointVideos.com and please fill out the survey. And now I'll go ahead and take the questions that you guys have. Thank you for being patient and listening to all the stuff that I had to show you. I hope it was beneficial. Let's look at the questions. All right. If the form is published and is internet enabled, can the form be saved locally? InfoPath 2007 form seems that, let's say over here, it's cutting off here a little bit, excuse me. InfoPath 2007 forms cannot. You know, InfoPath 2007, to my knowledge, also you can go ahead and save your form even if it is internet enabled. Saving your form template locally just means that saving your XSN file locally, and I'm 100% sure you can do that just fine in 2007 and 2010. Okay, Carrie, your question here is, I'm receiving a pop-up requiring a domain name and password. Yeah, that is usually common because that's actually an Internet Explorer setting. An Internet Explorer setting which says that go ahead and get the person's email address, the account name if they are if they're not authenticated, or even if they're authenticated, if you're jumping from the form to the SharePoint server, you still need to get authentication information. If you don't want it to show up the pop-up, then Carrie, what you would do is, here's a simple thing you can do. You can make the site a trusted site, or you can set up your site as an intranet site, as a specific intranet, put it in the intranet zone in Internet Explorer, and then your pop-up will disappear. It will not require you to provide a domain name and stuff anymore because it will already know it. Some person wants to know how many people are joining us today. I believe it's about 400 people that are here, or actually it was more than 400 people before, which is great. Thank you very much for joining, everybody. Is there a way to stop the screenshot of the form from being visible in the email when you submit an email data connection? Screenshot of the form being displayed in the email. I don't believe so. If you're saying, Dennis, that if you can have a view of the form that's hidden, then yes, you can make some hidden views that you can hide that don't show up, but I'm not sure what you mean by the screenshot of the form being visible when you have the email data connection. Have you used external lists with SQL Server database? What is your opinion on such use? You know, I've used external lists on SQL Server database, absolutely, and it works just fine actually. You can make a external list using SharePoint Designer, or you can make it using the browser, as long as you have an external content type, which you can create programmatically or through SharePoint Designer, and that works just fine, and also works just fine with InfoPath forms. Okay, I have a bunch of people here saying groove, groove, groove. This is when I forgot the word groove for some reason. I appreciate it. It was like 15 people who said that. So thank you very much, folks. Yeah, I don't know why I just forgot the name for a second. Is a form library included in SharePoint Foundation? Yes, Mark, it is. SharePoint Foundation does have form library, and you can use InfoPath just fine with SharePoint Foundation. Only restriction, of course, being that you cannot show your form in the browser. All right. Publishing InfoPath 2007 form into SharePoint form library always destroys existing views even though no data elements have changed. Wow. Publishing InfoPath 2007 form into SharePoint form library always destroys existing views. You know, I'm not sure, Tom, why you're getting that behavior. If you can shoot me an email with some, some place where it says that, I would really be interested to know. I've not seen that behavior before. Do you know if user roles will work in form services in SharePoint? And do you know if Visual Studio and InfoPath 2010 work better together now? The Visual Studio InfoPath 2010 story I'm not too familiar with, Carlos, so I cannot comment on that. User roles do work just like they worked in 2007. So you still need to, for example, use a web service or something like that to get the user role from SharePoint. and use that to show the appropriate view. The user roles that are built into InfoPath, that also works just like excuse me, just like the way it used to. I don't believe any changes have been made to that, Carlos. Okay, let's see what else I have here. What is the difference between filler and designer? As I mentioned before, InfoPath filler is to filling out the forms, designer is to design the form. For your end users, I would recommend only deploying the InfoPath filler application, not the designer application. But you do have to get licensing for both of them. It is not free. I actually had a conversation with one of the program managers, senior program managers at InfoPath team, InfoPath in Redmond, and I pleaded with them that, hey, you got to make some of this stuff for free, just like SharePoint Designer is free. And they're ready, but it's just the legal department, I guess, in Microsoft is not ready to make InfoPath free. Not just yet, at least. Are there any restrictions on browser-enabled forms? Things you could do in filler but not in browser mode? Okay, so that's a very good question, Dan. You know, you had some limits in browser forms in 2007. You could not show combo boxes. Combo boxes did not work. As you saw, that I had a combo box and it worked just fine when I published it out to SharePoint Server, so that's fixed. Also, there were things like bulleted lists. I believe bulleted lists just work just fine now. It didn't work in 2007. Also, embedded images within rich text boxes. That functionality did not work in 2007. That's also been fixed and it works just fine. And one big thing actually was cascading drop-downs. Cascading drop-downs, example of that would be, hey, you choose the country in the form and it gives you all the states in the country. You choose a state and it gives you, you know, all the different cities in that state. That cascading drop-down kind of functionality was not working. It was not available in SharePoint Server when you publish your forms. Now it is. So now that's a huge, huge plus, I think. Okay. The licensing someone's talking about, Peter, you're talking about, does it require only an enterprise license or enterprise plus InfoPath license? Well, to my knowledge, Peter, that if you have the enterprise license of SharePoint, your users can go ahead and fill out the form. Anybody can fill out the form. And then to design the form, of course, you need at least one InfoPath designer application to design your forms. All right. Let's see. Can you make a browser-based form for outside vendors or customers, even if they do not have an enterprise license? Do we need an enterprise license to just create browser-based forms? Well, you know, Dennis, to create forms which are for outside folks, for vendors, partners, etc., that is a tricky situation because you need to have the enterprise license of Internet. You need the SharePoint Server's enterprise license, which I don't know the figures for, but I know it's extremely expensive. But if that is the case, then yeah, you can do that. If you use InfoPath 2010 Designer for one of my, if I use InfoPath 2010 Designer for one of my forms, can a user fill in the form if they have InfoPath 2003? Ooh. Guillermo, to answer your question here, if you make InfoPath 2010 Designer form, your users, to my knowledge, will not be able to use InfoPath 2007 or 2003 to fill out the form. But InfoPath 2010 will let you make InfoPath 2007 capable forms. So InfoPath 2007 capable forms, once they are made using InfoPath 2010, then InfoPath 2007 can be used to fill out those forms. I don't believe InfoPath 2003 is supported anymore in this case. Sorry. All right. How do you separate the filler from the designer while installing InfoPath? That's a very good question, George, and I have not done it personally, so I'm not sure. But I believe it's just like any other software. So you'll see an InfoPath Designer, InfoPath Filler. If anybody knows the answer to that one, I would like to know also. Put it in the question and answer panel, please. If you've installed SharePoint InfoPath 2010 and you know, for your enterprise, and what options did it give you? I'm pretty sure it's going to give you two different software basically that you say, hey, I want to push this software, InfoPath Designer, to all my designers, InfoPath Filler to all my filler folks, and to my designer folks, so they can fill out the forms as well. All right, Diana, your question, will users with Office 2003 be able to complete 2010 forms? Okay, so that's the same as what I was saying before. 2003 is not supported anymore. Web browser forms, sure. Web browser forms don't require any software on the actual client. Just Internet Explorer is necessary. Question from Mark, are there any controls where you have some sort of list and the list items come from a list, even an external list, where you have some sort of list? Okay, so if you make a bulleted list, for example, that could be a list of items that you put into the form, and then that list of items can be used in a drop-down. I'm pretty sure that works just fine if you do that. Okay, another question from Mark. Can you do a type ahead control based on values in a list? The type ahead kind of control, which is like a suggestive control, that I don't believe you can do in InfoPath, not that I've seen at least. It's kind of like what Bing provides or Google provides, where you go and you start typing and it gives you suggestions of what you're looking for. I don't believe InfoPath has that, not to my knowledge at least. Okay, I'm going to take a few more, guys, and it's already 2:07 or 3:07 p.m. Eastern, so a few more questions, and then I'm going to have to leave. Okay, will this webinar be uploaded? So Kyle, I'm assuming uploaded, you mean will this be available online? You know what, yes, I am making this webinar available online. After this is done, I am recording it. It's going to be available for a few days, and then after that, it's going to be available only to the subscribers of the site. Okay? Can you have masks on field? For example, on the phone field, could you have had the mask in the field? There is a way to mask a field. In 2007 version, if I remember correctly, you had to have a separate control to do that, an outside control. I'm not sure if the mask field is built into InfoPath 2010. I'm going to have to check that out, Nick. Okay. How does a form published to email be filled in a BlackBerry, email, or iPhone? Oh, okay, Dan, so that's a pretty hard question, actually. If you have a form published by email, I don't believe you can use that in an iPhone or BlackBerry. Actually, I'm 100% sure you cannot. I've not done it, but I know you cannot because InfoPath 2010 filler application would be required to fill out the form. And I know for a fact that InfoPath 2010 filler is not compatible with any of the phones that are out there. You can make it a browser-enabled form. If you make it a browser-enabled form, then you can also make it a mobile-enabled form, and that will show up in a mobile device. So mobile enability is available in InfoPath. The only trick with making a form mobile-enabled is that form has to be administrator approved. Okay, so I talk about that in one of the videos, administrator approved template videos. You have to have it administrator approved for the form to work. All right, one more question, last one here. Well, let's see. Okay, what can I answer here? Does InfoPath allow you to upload a graphic that could be displayed as a graphic in a column? Matt, graphics work just fine, absolutely. There is actually a graphic control. So there's a picture control that you can put on the page. When you put on a picture control onto the form, then you can have users who are filling out the form click on that button or click on that graphic control button and then pick a picture and directly upload the picture to the form. And so what happens is that that picture gets embedded within the form itself, and it will be available wherever the form is being shown. All right, folks, that's it. Thank you very much once again for attending. I will be making this available online for a few days on the SharePointVideos.com site, and I'll go ahead and email you guys the link to it in my newsletter. Okay, in my newsletter, if you're not subscribed to it, please subscribe to it. You'll get an email telling you exactly what the recording is. Thanks again. Take care and have a great day.